As always, at the outset, I would like to offer my humble pranams to Bhagwan Baba, whose grace alone is making it possible for me to broadcast this series over Radio Sai. Loving Sai Ram and greetings from Prashanti Nilayam. In my last talk, I described Hanuman leaping across the ocean to land in Lanka and begin his search for Sita. Slowly but inevitably, his search takes him to Ravana's fabulous palace. I then took you up to the point where Hanuman makes a cautious entry into the palace proper. Let us pick up the story from that point. Having gained unobstructed entry to the bedroom of the most feared monarch of an impenetrable kingdom, Hanuman stopped to carefully observe the scene before him. The first thing that caught his attention was a huge, highly ornamental, lavishly decorated and jewel-studded pedestal on which had been placed a most luxurious couch. And sleeping soundly on it was Ravana himself, fully drunk, as was evident from the odor filling the room. Carefully scanning the room, Hanuman took in as many details as he could, and in the process noticed that sleeping on another magnificent and luxurious couch was a fair-complexioned lady of great beauty. For a moment, Hanuman took her to be Sita. Overcome by his natural simian nature, the Vanara began clapping his hands, kissing his tail and jumping up and down. However, good sense quickly prevailed, and Hanuman severely reproached himself, wondering how he could, even in his wildest dreams, make such a horrible mistake. A great fear then rose in him. Sita was purity personified. By imagining her to be sleeping in Ravana's bedroom, had he not committed an unpardonable sin? With such a heavy sin burden to carry, was there any chance of his successfully completing the mission he had embarked on? Resolving that one-pointed focus and steadfast pursuit of his mission, irrespective of the danger or the obstacles, was the only way to atone for his mistake, Hanuman then resumed his search. Nevertheless, even while so engaged, he kept thinking about the terrible mistake he had made. Repeatedly he said to himself, "It is inevitable that in the type of search I am involved in, I have to see all sorts of things and people. In a sense, even seeing Ravana is a great sin. Since I am searching for a lady, I necessarily have to look at women. One might argue that there was hardly any chance of Sita being found in some of the places that I have searched. On the other hand, there is the counter-argument that one cannot conduct a thorough search using probability considerations to rule out certain places. A thorough search has to be a thorough search, no matter what. Truly speaking, the issue of sin depends entirely on the attitude of the mind. If the mind is totally pure, the question of sin simply does not arise. That is what I feel based on my knowledge of the scriptures. Guided by that, maybe I should set aside these unwanted doubts and focus instead on what I should be doing next. Having thoroughly searched the entire palace complex where he expected Sita to be, and not finding the princess of Videha anywhere, Hanuman now became deeply concerned and began to wonder, have I failed? Does it mean that I have to go back empty-handed? How do I face my friends back home? And how do I convey the news of my failure to my king Sugriva and to Lord Rama, both of whom have placed so much faith in me? No, that cannot be. It's obvious that I simply cannot go back without positive news. which only means that I have to search more. Maybe I should now search in places that I earlier considered not likely to hold Sita. With that resolve, Hanuman now began searching the houses in small streets and lanes, and even in trees and chasms. Wherever he went, he saw only Rakshasis of various description, but no trace whatsoever of Sita. Once more Hanuman became depressed. Lost in thought, he wondered. Sampati stated very clearly that he saw Sita in Lanka. But here I am in Lanka and I have searched everywhere thoroughly. Yet I have not found any trace of Sita anywhere. Could it be that while she was being kidnapped and Ravana was fleeing in a hurry, Sita wriggled to free herself from Ravana's grip and in the process fell into the sea? Or has Ravana, unable to persuade Sita to become his consort, simply lost his patience and killed her? Perhaps it was not Ravana but his wives who became very jealous of Sita and got rid of her. Whatever it is, I am not able to spot Sita. Do I go back and tell Rama that I cannot find her? Or do I tell him that she is no longer alive and that's why I could not see her? Either way, my report would be negative and break Rama's heart. In fact, it is not only Rama but also Lakshmana and Sugriva who would be devastated. Of course, I do not have to go back and could instead end my life by seeking a watery grave. However, that is not an option, for that is forbidden by the scriptures. On reflection, it appears that the only option open to me is to press on with the search and look for Sita in every nook and corner that I have not explored thus far. After rededicating himself to the mission he had embarked on, Hanuman prayed to Rama with intense focus. Later, emerging from his deep contemplation, Hanuman looked around slowly and noticed that some distance away there was a huge grove made up largely of tall and stately Ashoka trees. Deciding that this is where he would begin his second innings of intense research, Hanuman shouted Jai Sai Ram and with one big leap landed inside the grove known as Ashokavana. Once inside, Hanuman realized that what he earlier thought was a mere grove was, in truth, a kind of manicured forest, filled not only with a variety of trees, creepers, bushes, plants, ponds full of lilies, and so on, but also a large variety of birds and plenty of deer. There was also a small mountain from which rolled down a beautiful stream. After admiring the beauty of Ashokavana, designed and created by none other than Vishwakarma, Hanuman decided that this would be a good place to begin his renewed search for Sita. And for planning his search strategy, Hanuman parked himself on top of a particularly large Ashoka tree that looked rather special and most inviting. Positioning himself in that vantage point, Hanuman then began to survey the entire grove. As he looked around, Hanuman saw that in the midst of the wonderful setting that surrounded him was a grand temple supported on 1,000 pillars with steps paved with coral and platforms paved in gold. Some distance away from the temple, he saw a woman in tattered clothes, looking quite emaciated and surrounded by many Rakshasis. Hanuman immediately froze and observed keenly for a while. Though looking weak and famished, there was an exceptional radiance around the woman surrounded by ogresses, and without question she looked divine. Everything about her and her situation strongly suggested that she was Sita, the consort of Lord Rama, whom he was searching for. Hanuman noted that the jewels she was wearing matched the description that Rama had given him. Moreover, she was not wearing the kind of jewels that had been dropped from Ravana's chariot while it was flying over Mount Rishyamukha. In every respect, Hanuman concluded that the lady he had spotted ought to be Sita and none other, and instantly his spirits went soaring. Not only did he experience great joy, but also an indescribable reverence for Sita, who, despite her shabby dress, had the aura of Lakshmi, the consort of Lord Vishnu. Firmly convinced that it was Rama's grace alone that enabled him to locate Sita, Hanuman then offered to Rama a silent expression of deep gratitude. In the meanwhile, the moon having risen high, there was plenty of moonlight, thanks to which Hanuman was able to see clearly not only Sita, but also the Rakshasis who were surrounding her. Grotesque in appearance and crude as well as abominable in behavior, they looked fearsome in every respect. While some of them were busy drinking huge quantities of wine, others were devouring meat like gluttons. Sita was clearly in a most pitiable and helpless state, and without doubt needed some urgent help. Nevertheless, notwithstanding Sita's condition, Hanuman decided not to move or engage in any kind of action till the night was over. As dawn approached, Hanuman began to hear sounds of Veda chanting in the distance. Even though this was Rakshasa country, there obviously were some who had not only mastered the scriptures but also followed the tradition of chanting Vedas at daybreak. Meanwhile, back in the royal palace, awakened by the Vedic chants as well as the special music sung announced to the monarch that a new day had dawned, Ravana quickly freshened up and, after adorning himself with jewels and ornaments of every kind, made his way to the Ashokavana, accompanied by 100 beautiful bells, whose job it was to attend to every convenience of Ravana, like serving wine, for example, should he want a sip. Slowly and imperiously, Ravana walked towards Sita, striving hard to impress her in every manner possible, with his power, wealth, and desirability. Watching him closely, Hanuman had to grudgingly admit that evil though he was, there was an undeniable and unmistakable radiance around Ravana. Meanwhile, surrounded by several mean and tough-looking Rakshasis, Ravana tried to strike a grand posture. Standing with his arms folded, Ravana kept staring at Sita and drinking in her matchless beauty, even as lustful desires rose sharply within him. Addressing Sita, Ravana then said, "O most beautiful lady, do you have any idea how much I long for you? Why do you keep me waiting month after month? I promise you that I will not touch you till you start loving me. At the same time, it is better that you come to terms with reality as quickly as possible. Can you not see to what state your continued stubbornness has reduced you? Here you are, a princess entitled to the highest luxuries possible. And yet, driven by stupid and meaningless dreams, you are denying yourself the greatest of privileges, all of which would be yours, if only you utter one word, namely, yes. Do you seriously believe that Rama is going to do the impossible? That is, cross a huge ocean and then perform the unachievable, namely defeat me, the unconquerable Ravana, in order to rescue you? Sita, please listen to me. Truly, you are a jewel amongst women, and your wonderful youth is being frittered away while you are hanging on to meaningless expectations. I have many queens, but if you become mine, I shall make you the foremost of them all. Not merely that, I have subjugated large part of the globe, and I shall offer all those territories to your father, Emperor Janaka. I give you my solemn assurance that not only you, but even all your relatives shall enjoy unlimited prosperity. Finally, no matter what you may think presently, I am, in fact, much superior to your Rama." For Sita, hearing this vain and boastful ranting of Ravana was sheer agony. Fearing that all this bragging might be a prelude to some kind of direct physical assault, Sita plucked a long straw and, with great deliberation, placed it before her, making absolutely certain that Ravana not merely saw what she was doing, but also understood the silent message she was transmitting, which was, "You foul demon, this grass represents a red line that you shall cross only at your own risk. Presently, I might appear utterly helpless and entirely at your mercy. But you would do well to understand that a chaste woman has enormous hidden powers that could be highly dangerous." Taking her own time, Sita replied slowly and in a distressed tone, "There is not much for me to say, except that the sooner you stop pining for me, the better it is for you. I remind you once more that I am the lawfully wedded wife of Rama, the son of Emperor Dasharatha. Being the virtuous wife of another man, it is impossible for me to think of any other male even for 1 second. The best course open to you is to immediately restore me to Rama. Seek his forgiveness for the sin you have committed by abducting me and beg for his friendship. I assure you that Rama is unbelievably generous, and he would rather forgive you and let you go than fight with you. Not that invading Lanka and defeating you is beyond his infinite power. However, being the embodiment of compassion, he would always prefer the conciliatory option if it is available. Just pause for a moment and look back. When Rama was severely provoked by your henchmen in Janasthana, he wiped them out in no time at all. And remember, it was an entire army of several thousand warriors that he annihilated, single-handed, I might add. Now, if you felt that your authority had been challenged, you should have confronted Rama and tested him on the battlefield right then. Instead, you chose the softer and cowardly option of kidnapping me, after making sure that Rama was nowhere near. Right now, you are deluding yourself with the false belief that you are invincible. The day is not far off when your delusion would be destroyed and you would pay for your grievous sin with your very life." Sita's stinging response stunned Ravana, who least expected it. Instead of a weak and pliant princess, what he saw before him was an amazingly courageous lady, supremely confident of the might and power of her dear husband, despite the apparently great odds stacked against him. Trying to appear unruffled, Ravana replied, "Even though you deserve death for speaking the way you have done to the most powerful person on earth, I shall try to restrain my anger as much as possible, because I am crazy about you beyond description. However, there is a limit to what I can bear and tolerate. Let me make clear my ultimatum to you. Earlier, I gave you a time limit of 12 months. 10 of them have passed and only 2 months are left for you to make up your mind. If at the end of the deadline you continue to remain stubborn and refuse to wed me, then my cooks would mince you and serve you as a part of my meal. Think it over." It was the most menacing threat, but for once Sita was not as friendless as it might have appeared. Unseen and unheard by Ravana and his attendants, the daughters of the gods of heaven quietly whispered words of reassurance and confidence into her ears. Drawing courage from the whispering angels, Sita took a deep breath and said to Ravana, "They say that when a person relentlessly courts disaster, reason and logic abandon that person. You may believe the ocean cannot be crossed. You might imagine that you are invincible, and so on. But let me tell you here and now, whatever may be the delusions you suffer from, Rama is going to cross the ocean, come after you, declare war on Lanka, and personally confront you on the battlefield, award you the punishment of death that you richly deserve, and then rescue me. It is not me whose days are numbered, as you mistakenly believe, but your days that would soon come to an end. I should also let you know that using the power of my purity and chastity, I can, all by myself, reduce you to ashes in the twinkling of an eye. However, I am refraining from doing so because getting rid of you is the mandate of Rama. Finally, it is time you understood that the foul abduction you indulged in was ordered by destiny as a prelude to your extermination. Ravana hardly expected such a fierce outburst from a woman whom he thought was not only physically weak but also emotionally drained out completely. So choked with fury he became that for minutes he could not gain control of his voice and even make a token reply. All he could do was to hiss like a wounded serpent and roll his eyes in impotent anger. When he finally found his voice, he roared, "O wretched woman, you are foolishly obsessed with a man who has lost everything and is wandering like a penniless nomad. Soon I shall make you vanish without trace, even as the rising sun devours the night." Despite his bombastic words, Ravana felt utterly humiliated, outraged that he was unable to subjugate an unarmed woman, even though his name alone was enough to make all the three worlds tremble. Attempting to divert Ravana's attention, Dhanya Malini, his youngest and stunningly beautiful wife, pleaded with the Rakshasa king to return to the palace, where he could relax in her company. Accepting the suggestion, Ravana went back, lost in reflection, and feeling highly dejected about the terrible loss of face as well as the public humiliation he had suffered. Shortly after Ravana left, a Rakshasi named Ekajata screamed at Sita, "You stupid princess, you are totally ignorant of the great lineage of the monarch of Lanka. Hear it now from me. When the Supreme Lord ordained into existence Brahma the Creator and ordered the latter to populate the universe, Brahma brought into existence, purely by thought process, 6 progenitors known as Prajapatis. The 4th Prajapati, known as Pulatsya, had a son named Vishrava, who was a great rishi. Ravana is none other than the son of that great Vishrava. Thus, the one on whom you have so thoughtlessly hurled so many insults is a direct descendant of Brahma himself. It's a matchless honor to be the wife of such a great one. And yet, you are foolishly denying yourself a great privilege that is being handed to you on a silver platter. Do you realize that if you just say yes, Ravana would immediately forget Mandodari, his principal queen, and give you instead the prime spot, covering you with priceless and unimaginable jewels? Other Rakshasis then joined Ekajata in adding their own strong recommendations, warning Sita of dire consequences if she continued to remain stubborn. Thoroughly exhausted by the most unpleasant encounter, Sita was least prepared for this fresh onslaught by the ogresses. Nevertheless, unwilling to let such improper and imbecile advice go without rebuttal, Sita responded sharply, "I am appalled by the cheap and sinful advice all of you are trying to give me. Let me make this absolutely clear. I am a human being, and under no circumstance should a human lady become the wife of a Rakshasa." Angered by Sita's defiant mood, the ogresses screamed back, "You fool, we made a terrible mistake. Truly speaking, you don't deserve our emperor as we had mistakenly imagined." That's all I have time for this week, and I do hope that you felt thrilled and inspired by this narration, which celebrates the matchless devotion of Hanuman. Before I conclude, I repeat the appeal I made last week for feedback, lots of it in fact. Even in the days when there was only snail mail, as it is now called, people took the trouble to communicate their feedback to radio stations, even if it was by post, and even if it took a lot of trouble, such as writing and dropping a letter into the post box after fixing a stamp, etc. Today, all that hassle is gone, and everyone is just one mouse click away. But still, we are not getting much feedback. What has happened? Has the mouse just sneaked away? If so, please complain to Ganesha, get back your mouse and send us your thoughts. Make Radio Sai your companion and not a voice in the wilderness. Thank you for being with us, and all the best. As always, I offer this talk to Swami, who made it possible. Jai Sai Ram.